All right. Okay, everybody, what's going on? What's going on? This is your host, ToneDuncan. We are starting in a couple seconds. This is our Tuesday Truth Seekers. Every Tuesday on our channel right here, truthseekers.com, we get an opportunity to bring to you what's really real. I want to say what's happening to YouTube, to Instagram, to Facebook, to all my friends, everybody checking out what we're doing. Today I have no backdrop. And the reason why is because our new backdrop is coming. I'm excited about that. I just want to say what's happening. And I'll get my new backdrop really soon, so I'm excited about that. But this is our studio being built out as we go. Always excited. And thank you so very much. Remember to like, comment, share. Let's get this conversation going. This is Truth Seekers, and I am your host, ToneDuncan. Every Tuesday, that's Chicago time, 7 p.m., it is my privilege to hang out with you and talk to you about what's really happening. Hope you guys have a few minutes to set to the side because we are about to keep this conversation going. And today what we're talking about is we're talking about why we end up being in the kind of relationships that seem to be so detrimental. Why is it that we constantly find ourselves in relationships where they just don't work? You know, we're constantly finding ourselves in these same problems, and there's a reason. You know, it's truly an explanation behind this, but we got to dig deep. We got to really talk about it. So today I'm hoping that what ends up happening is that you share a little bit about what you've learned and what you see and how you're dealing with the things you experience, and listen on to what other people have to say, because, you know, it really does take a community of conversation to properly assess, you know, all the different intangibles, all the different strange truths that create the realities that we dig and that we live in. So by all means, you guys, I am excited about today. I'm excited about an opportunity to speak to you. So let's get this conversation started. First and foremost, like I said, this is an interactive show. So I want you to like, I want you to comment, I want you to share this. I want to make sure that we're getting this out to everybody and anybody who might be a part of this conversation. Before we get started, I just want to say, you know, these shows are really about bringing in an entire group of people with diverse thoughts, diverse, you know, ways of looking at life, and more importantly, different perspectives to the conversation. See, it's hard to have a real conversation with people in today's climate, because there's so much emotion, there's so much pain, there's so much secondary, trivial conversation going. It is so unlikely that you just absolutely get a chance to really talk about key subjects, about real things. It's just not that common. So shows like mine, shows like this today, gives us an opportunity to conversate, to bring our thoughts together. So thank you so very much for that. I hope you're ready to have this conversation, because part of this is about really letting go of your, you know, need to be defensive, your need to shine, your need to seem like you got everything going on. It's really about letting that go. You know, we're at a point in our lives where we know we'll never be, you know, perfect to everybody, and we know we'll never be as terrible as we sometimes see ourselves. So it's really just a matter of enjoying who you are and the growth and the path that it takes to get to where you want to go. You know, this is how I like to see it. This is kind of where I am as a person. So hopefully this is something that, you know, that you feel confident in doing as well. So you know, with all that being said, let's kind of move on to what we need to talk about. And one of the primary things that we really need to talk about is why. You know, and I'll say this, and I say this with the greatest amount of respect. why such unhappy relationships? Why all the time? Why is it that you'll put yourself in a situation where you're in an unhappy relationship and you won't want to leave? You'll realize that it's not really going the way that you want it to go, and you stick around. It's like strange. Before I get started, I want to say special what's up to my beautiful wife, Shay. Always a pleasure to have your wife watching, checking you out, and letting you know when you're making mistakes or when you're getting things together. So, hey, beautiful lady, thank you so much. The thing that kind of stays in my mind is, why it is that we get stuck in unhappy relationships. One of the things that we have to understand is there's always going to be conflicts in a relationship. There's absolutely nothing you can do. I don't care how great the relationship is in your mind. I don't care how great of a person you feel you are, how well of a job you think you do in a relationship. There's a reality, and this reality is that you will never be in a conflict-free relationship. There will always be some part to the issue that's kind of like a conflict. What do? You have to accept that for being what it is. But the question is ultimately, how do you deal with the conflict? Conflicts are just a part of life. There's not much you can do about there being a conflict. The real thing and the only thing you can truly do is specifically how you address the conflict. How do you plan to deal with conflicts in your life? Because there's different types of conflicts, and there's different perspectives on conflicts. A lot of you know because you deal with conflicts on a regular basis. But when we look at conflicts, you have to understand first and foremost that not all conflicts are obviously the same. And a lot of relationships aren't built on conflicts. They just deal with some conflicts. So conflicts are a necessary part of a relationship. They're not a great part of the relationship, but nevertheless, they're a necessary part of the relationship. Conflicts happen. The thing that I always ask, the thing that I think is most important is, are these conflicts so toxic that they're destroying your relationship? Because, if you understand that certain conflicts are going to happen, then you realize it's all about how you face those conflicts. Because when you face them like mature adults and you work through some areas that are kind of hard to discuss, you really work, you grow. You grow as people, and, these relationships are actually become, almost a gift, because they give you an opportunity for you to really get to know each other more intimately, to get to know the deeper person, to get to know the person who is a little bit unlike you, even though you like them so much, if you are the type of person who always chooses to be defensive and fight, then you're never going to be able to really overcome the adversities of a relationship. But if you are noticing that these relationships don't really benefit you, they don't give you the kind of happiness, the kind of enjoyment in the relationship that you feel you deserve, and you're still in it, you got to ask yourself, okay, well, hold on, why? If you're realizing that you're more into sticking out a relationship than you are in making a determination on whether or not the relationship is healthy, then we got some problems. I can give you an example because it's so important for us to point this out. Too often and far too many times, you guys, too often and far too many times, you'll find somebody who's in a relationship knowing that the relationship is insalvageable. And it's really sad because, like this kind of person will come and talk to you and be like, me and my girl and me and my guy, we're back arguing again. We're back fighting again. And you're like, okay, but I just talked to you. Like you were just fighting and things weren't going well just a few days ago on this situation. Why are you still with this person? It seems like you guys are always constantly having a problem. Well, you find out that this particular individual, they can't. They can't see past trying to work on the issue that they are having. They can't see that every single time it's a new issue. They can't see that for whatever reason, there's pain and not happiness as a base to a relationship. So, one of the things that I think is so important, one of the things that I really feel we need to start to understand is that there are some relationships that aren't salvageable. And a relationship that isn't salvageable, you have to be able to walk away from. When you don't understand conflicts, when you don't understand what creates a negative relationship and what creates a positive relationship, then you're so prone to make the same mistakes and suffer from the same problems over and over again. When you think about a relationship, you should think about things that are enjoyable. You should think about walks with each other. You should think about fun times. You should think about, looking forward to spending time with an individual, But here is the problem. The problem is most people jump into relationships before they've had a chance to really clear themselves of the toxicity of their last relationship, clear themselves of the mental conflict going on in their personal lives before they jump into these relationships with other people. And so for this reason, and it's kind of strange, it's really sad, but the truth is, for this reason, you bring all of this negative baggage into your next relationship. But what's worse than a negative baggage is you bring this desire to fight and make this one work, which is so strange. It's so dangerous, because the reality is that you can't make something work that isn't supposed to be. And if you're finding yourself in unhappy relationships and you're finding yourself not able to leave these relationships, the reality is that you really have to start to think to yourself and ask, are you the reason why you're still in a bad relationship? It's a tough question, because so many of us, we look at our ability to fight, our ability to drive, our ability to try and stick through it, our ability to try and make things better. But we don't understand that a part of this staying power is based in low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is a real strange deal, because so many of us don't realize how deeply we're affected with self-esteem issues. I mean, self-esteem is the attitude we choose to have towards ourselves, right? I mean, basically, it's composed of the beliefs that we have about ourselves. So if you have negative beliefs about yourselves, then that's how it is. You have positive beliefs about yourselves, well, these kind of things create your self-esteem. A low self-esteem is when an individual has this distorted idea that they don't have any value, that they're worthless, and that other people don't appreciate them in the world. I mean, it involves having so many negative thoughts and beliefs about yourself. And the reason why a lack of a solid self-esteem is a problem is that people start to see themselves in this way. It becomes the worldview in which you see all the people in your relationships. And this is the real heart of the issue, because then we look up and we find out why we're constantly in these unhappy relationships. And it's because we have such low self-esteem. We think we're confident. I mean, we really do. Most of the most confident sounding people are really not that confident. They have just such a strong bravado. Most of them have such a great ability to hide, to mask the insecurities that they truly have and the negative thinking that they seem to always be without. I mean, here's negative thinking when we come into a relationship. One of the number one negative thinking statements I ever hear about a relationship is, this might be the best I can do. When you're not happy and you think a level of unhappiness, a level of stress and anxiety is the best you can do, you're missing your truth. I mean, seriously, you're missing your own happiness. When you hear somebody, they have this belief like, nobody else will ever love me this much, so I should stay. You might think you're right, But the reality, and I want to say this really, really honestly, the reality is if the person you're with creates a level of stress in your life and you feel like that's love, if you feel like that kind of love, worst, cannot be duplicated, no. See, these are based on negative thinking. See, a person who has a more positive belief in themselves, a person who has a more positive outlook on who they are and the kind of value they bring to any relationship would not think like that. A person who has a quality belief system within themselves wouldn't think to themselves, oh, I shouldn't be too picky. No, a person who's got an amazing level of confidence and an amazing level of self-worth and belief would feel like I should be really picky because there's somebody out there who is so well designed for the kind of person I am that I need not be held up, shackled down into a relationship where I'm rarely ever happy. See, this is the truth on understanding where your belief system is and whether or not you have negative thinking that is causing you that kind of distortion. Too many of us are just lost when it comes to negative thinking. I mean, here's the thing is people with negative thinking are, the kind of people that are always having difficulty accomplishing their goals. They often stop themselves from doing the things that they want to do because they lose the gusto or they listen to such and such. I mean, negative thinking is the one, these people, they're always in constant struggle. I mean, every time you look up, it's one thing or it's another. And these kind of people you get into relationships with, and they may have a wonderful heart. They may be very sweet some of the time, and you may be the kind of person who really doesn't want to abandon somebody who's got anything close to a good bone in their body. And so you find yourself stuck in this situation, and you try and relate to these people, but every time they talk, their whole premise is how everybody else is able to enjoy happiness, but they're not happy. Everybody's happier than they are. For some reason, they always got they always get the short end of the stick. It's always something, and you feel bad. But, these are the kind of people that always feel like there's always somebody out to get them. There's always some negative reason why they're in this issue. And this is a real issue for me. Today I want to talk to you guys about this because and I say this with respect, if you find yourself in unhappy relationships, and I listen and I watch people post about these things and, always quick to air out their laundry, and you're like, really? Really? This isn't the kind of conversation that you should be having on Facebook. But more importantly, it's not the kind of life struggle you should be having at this point in your life. And some people, they flip that around. They'll say something like, oh, I'm too old to be single. I just got to deal with it. I've been around so long. I know that there's good and there's bad in every person. So, I don't want to be the one creating all the drama. So I'm just going to try and work this out. It's like, no, that's not the way it goes. That's not the way it works. You find people who will stick into a relationship for financial reasons. Some people are in a relationship because they don't feel that they can afford to leave. I mean, think about this. Is this the craziest thing in the world? You've got a person who's in a relationship with you almost strictly because they know how impossible it is for them to afford to live outside of the relationship because they're so in need of the income that you bring to the table. That's a tough one because these are kind of realities that we are dealing with on a regular basis. Can you believe this? And this is the thing that I'm talking about. I don't care how financially strong a relationship is. There is no price tag to put on mental happiness. You know, you cannot afford a relationship that's full of stress and unhappiness. It just doesn't work like that. You know, so I don't care what kind of financial situation that you're in. That does not matter. What matters ultimately is whether or not you have the quality of happiness, the peace you deserve, the enjoyment in life that makes you want to be in that relationship. If you find yourself in a relationship you know is not good for you and you can't get out, and you can't get out because of the way that you rationalize and think about things, because you don't see yourself as being powerful enough to become the person who makes the decision to move on. If you can't see that reality, then let me tell you this so you understand wholeheartedly. You are going about this with a negative thinking pattern. You are going about this with some really low self-esteem thoughts in your mind. And if you're in a relationship that's riddled with non-stop criticism. I mean, think non-stop criticism. I have listened to relationships where people, you know, my wife and I, we might have somebody over for dinner. I might be in the company of a couple or something of this regard. And the very first thing that I start to hear is this really non-stop criticism between the two of them. And you know, it's a strange thing. When you start your stuff in front of another couple, and you get to clawing back and forth with each other with this, you know, lightweight, petty criticism of each other. You know, that is such an indicator of the kind of relationship that you have. When you are so focused on the one or three things that somebody does wrong, instead of how amazing this individual is, and instead of how many awesome, you know, things that this person brings to the table, if you can't see past that, then we got some problems. See, nobody ever trusts a criticizer because they know that if you're going to criticize one person, you're going to criticize them. And if you criticize them, you will never truly be happy. See, because trust involves knowing that somebody else has your well-being, has your back. I mean, they know that they can trust you because of how you treat them. If you're always criticizing, you're always petty, come on. How long will a relationship like that last? I mean, other people stop listening when you over-criticize. They don't want to hear you anymore. You know, you become seen as controlling. And who amongst us really ever want to be controlled by somebody? You know, but these are the kind of relationships that when you see it, you have to have the ability to see your way out. You know, and I mean, how hard is it? Because for some of us, it's harder than others. For some of us, we really don't see the responsibility that we have to find a solid relationship. Some of us, we really can't see the imperativeness of just walking away from a relationship that doesn't work. Again, today's conversation is about understanding why we have such a hard time leaving unhappy relationships. You know, the thing that I can't understand about people who are constantly criticizing each other and think that somehow that this is going to build a more powerful relationship is that criticism creates such a negative environment. And if you find yourself in a really critical environment where you're constantly being criticized, you're constantly feeling like other people are mistreating you, you know, it's only just a matter of time before you just feel like this isn't for you, you know, and the happiness is over with. Criticism blocks the ability for you to see what's valuable in somebody else. And this creates that kind of unhappy relationship where you just got to move on. You can't do it. You know, and see, criticism is one of the first steps towards emotional abuse. And we need to understand how much emotional abuse is acceptable and not acceptable in a relationship. I mean, too many times, you know, we deal with emotional abuse and we don't understand the power that emotional abuse has. You know, we don't understand why emotional abuse is such a big deal. We don't understand that emotional abuse and it's abusive relationships, they may not leave physical marks, But I mean, they have deep psychological ramifications on our happiness and on the level of stress that we live in. You know, emotional abuse, it corrodes your self-esteem. I mean, corrodes your self-esteem. How many of you people have been in a relationship? Because I know I've been in a relationship where, you know, before you even leave the house, you've heard 5 to 7 negative things. I mean, and then what kind of perspective are you going to walk out into the world with? You know, this is the reason why I'm telling you, you know, a negative relationship where you're unhappy, it creates such a launch pad for a terrible day. I mean, when you're not in a great mood and you interact with people, that energy rubs off on them. And then this really creates negative relationships outside of that relationship because you're bringing that kind of energy into the rest of the world. This is such the reason why you have to have the ability to leave unhappy relationships. And I'm not just talking about like with a significant other, because obviously that's important. But I mean, some of us, we are dealing with so many unhappy relationships across the board because of negative belief systems that we have. Worse than that is it allows us to suffer from such emotional abuse. And the worst thing about suffering from emotional abuse is that it actually creates a codependency. We start to look for relationships that restate our purpose. We start to look for other people to give us back the dignity, to give us back the happiness, to give us back the confidence that a negative relationship had given us. So that codependency is the reason why you end up in a relationship with somebody who says something nice to you or somebody who treats you right, but then you become dependent on hearing these nice things or being treated a certain way. And typically what you don't understand is because you're not healed is that that particular person that you are siphoning off all of that positive energy is also somebody who's probably giving you negative energy with it. Sometimes even more negative energy than positive. Because again, when you haven't cleared yourself of the mental chaos, when you haven't cleared yourself of the emotional stress, when you haven't cleared yourself of the fogginess of trying to work out something that didn't settle up right, when you've been in that situation, you have to give yourself time. Because when you jump into another relationship, this is the codependency you bring with you. So many people wonder why bounce back relationships never work. It's because the only thing you truly want out of the bounce back relationship were the things you weren't getting in the original relationship, which means all the good things of the original relationship you are not looking for in the bounce. And this is the reason why they fail. It's the reason why they suffer so often. You know, codependent relationships happen every day. And we've done a pretty substantial talk on codependent relationships because it's important to understand a codependent relationship if you're going to understand what it is that keeps you stuck in a negative relationship. Always understand that no matter how bad the relationship seems, there is some benefit that you are seeking to gain from that relationship. But sometimes when you have negative belief systems, the things that you are looking to gain are also of reaffirmation that you are not as great as you could be, that you are not worthy of the things that you are supposed to be worthy of, that you can't have the things that other people can have, that you can't demand a love that is the best love you could ever possibly want. See, these two are some of the problems with these unhappy relationships. They reinforce. And here's the thing is, people don't understand what addictive anxiety is. The second key ingredient to staying in a relationship past its prime, sticking around, is, you know, this anxiety. It might sound illogical, but the truth, how do I say it like this? If you grew up in a home environment that left you anxious, you might unconsciously, as an adult, choose a relationship that causes that same amount of anxiety because it feels normal. See, so when a relationship's constantly got you stressed and there's a certain amount of anxiety to it, and you look up and you say, well, I came from a really crazy home. I came from a household that had a lot of arguing. I came from a household where there were, some form of, rift between the parents that was constantly squabbling and they were in and out of happiness. Well, I just need a little bit of that so that I can feel normal. See, this is a scary thing, y'all. Because we need a little bit of swamp water to feel okay. Because we never had it great, we feel we should never have been great. I need a little bit of spice in my life. Well, the truth of the matter is, these are all based on things that happened well before your psyche was developed. We started to believe that we needed a particular style of a relationship because it was a relationship we had grown to know the best. And you depend on that because now it seems more real. Now it seems more like what you know. But what you know might have been the worst thing you could have ever experienced. Hey, I want to just say this again. This is Truth Seekers. I am on my Truth Seekers page. So I appreciate you guys for checking it out. Truth Seekers on Instagram, Truth Seekers on YouTube, Truth Seekers on Facebook. I want to say thank you so very much for checking me out every Tuesday. We got a 1-hour show. It's Truth Seekers. And what we do is we dig into the truth of the matters that mean most to us. We switch it around a lot. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking a lot about relationships, talking a lot about who we are in these relationships. And this is a conversation. So I want you to like, I want you to comment. But I also want you to share. I want you to add this to your profile page on Facebook. I want you to share this with friends on YouTube and on Instagram. I want to get your comments, want to get your likes, want to get your thoughts. But I also want to get your engagement. So let's get everybody and anybody we know to jump on this hashtag Truth Seekers. Truth Seekers, that's SEEKRZ. Truth Seekers. All right, thank you so very much. I look forward to hearing more about what you have to say. But as it relates to sticking into these unhappy relationships, what you find out, and I mean this, what you find out is that most of the time, the people who are constantly stuck in these relationships, you know what they suffer from more than anything else? A fear of abandonment. And do you know where this fear of abandonment came from? Usually comes from our childhood. Usually comes from that moment in time where we were abandoned. We were let go. We were left. We felt alone. We needed somebody. We didn't care anybody. Just somebody who made us feel like we weren't alone. Tammy says it's sad that we'd rather be in a relationship that is bad for us besides being alone because, yep, I'll tell you this, and this is the truth. We end up being in a situation oftentimes because sometimes bad attention is worse than no attention. And we hear this a lot with children, especially with young children who lash out and they get themselves in trouble and the teachers, they respond right there. Oh, you're going to the principal. Oh, you did it this time. You're a bad kid. And the truth of the matter is they don't realize that this particular child was just really, really in need of attention. And they found that it was easier for them to get negative attention than it was for them to live without any attention at all. And so, sadly, this is one of those things that it really tears into the heart of this, because that's such a sad situation. When you're in a relationship where you're not happy, you're always walking on eggshells. You're always feeling like this is that time where things are going to go really bad. You start feeling like, I don't know if I'm winning or losing in this relationship. I don't know what happiness truly is. And it's this fight or flight personality. They call it a fight or flight mode. And basically when you're in a fight or flight mode, it's not the kind of relationship you want to be in. This fight or flight response, also called acute stress response, is something that you usually hear referenced to frequently in psychology as it relates to, this feeling of all systems go, this reaction your body is triggered. It perceives a threat of any kind. It's just ready to attack. It's ready to run. It's ready to fight. It's ready to do whatever it has to. But this is the way we walk into our door when we're in a bad relationship. We open the door and we're just ready. Are we going to fight? Or am I just going to walk out the house? Or are we going to have a good day? And this is the kind of stress that you walk into in an unhappy relationship. Call your girlfriend and this is not your better friend. This isn't the friend that is constantly saying the things to fortify and build you up. But this is a friend that always ends up in a contentious conversation. This is a friend where it always seems to go either way. This is a friend where you really don't understand why you keep calling this person. This could even be a family member where you get on the phone and one of three things are about to happen. I'm either going to curse this person out. I'm really going to either feel really offended by this person, or, we're going to shock each other and have a good conversation. This is terrible. Because we deal with these kind of people on a regular basis and you can't get out of it because you don't know how to get out of an unhappy relationship. Sometimes you've got to call it for what it is. You don't have to burn bridges. You don't have to fall out with people, but you have to assess a situation to a level where you understand whether or not it is edifying you or tearing you down. This is what the real issue is. The real issue ultimately is that some people that you deal with have some real borderline personality disorders. And if you don't understand what borderline personality disorders are, if you don't understand how these things happen, if you don't understand how to recognize these in people, then you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle because a borderline personality disorder is basically, it's not like this super mental disorder. These are like little strange things that people have. They suffer, adapting to their environment, sometimes due to abuse, sometimes due to neglect, sometimes because they have a very strong emotional reaction to things. Sometimes it's just based on their childhood, and people don't understand, but borderline personality disorders are more common than you think. I'm talking about real problems. It's important to grasp that borderline personalities are people just like anybody else. And they suffer from this every day, and they look the same like you. They get in real relationships, and we don't understand them. We don't get it. We don't understand like how simple it is for the treatment of borderline personalities, but also how easy it is to come across somebody who you thought was really, really not dealing with any problems. So I want y'all to understand this, because sometimes I think we don't understand how many people we deal with who are dealing with some real stuff. Too many times you think the only problem that the person you're dealing with is you. Whatever problem you're going through with that person, but we don't realize the amount of baggage these people are going through, the amount of outbursts they are having before and without your issue, the amount of negative thinking they have, the amount of just bad relationships they develop because of these personality disorders, these personality issues. I don't want to go too deep into this because people sometimes, they just don't realize. I talk to people all the time, and as I'm talking to people, the very first thing that blows my mind is when I see a personality disorder and I know this person has no clue that they have this disorder. But when you talk to them about it, see, they've seen the world through those lenses so long, they don't even know it. They don't even know. You have to know. And if you're in a situation with somebody who's having these kind of problems, you have to be willing to walk away. You have to be willing to walk away because you can't help somebody until they want help. And you have to help yourself first, which means you have to want to help yourself. And if you really want to help yourself, you've got to learn to move away from the negative things that are pulling you down. See, some people never had the love, the attention, the communication they needed. You know, there's this theory. It's this theory called the attachment theory, right? Attachment theory basically states that in order to grow up and become a secure adult, you had to have consistent and reliable love in the first few years of your life. You think about how many of our friends and family grew up in crack homes, grew up being bounced around with family members and friends, grew up with a parent that was working all day and didn't get a chance to basically show the kind of day-to-day love and interaction that they would have wanted to. Okay? And so now you get a child that basically only time the mother sees the child is basically when they come home from work, the baby's asleep, they put the baby into the bed from the babysitter. The baby's on the way to the babysitter, the baby's still asleep. You know, so the parent doesn't even get a chance to see the child. Maybe it's like this for the first few years of their life. And what's the parent trying to do? Just survive. Just trying to make it for them. And now this kind of person, they grow up and this becomes a person who has all kind of attachment issues because of something that was you weren't even around at the time when these kind of problems happen. And you know, and this is a real thing because too many of us are dealing with relationships right now that a person needs a timeout and need to go sit down and go deal with somebody else like a therapist. And clean up, get their minds right, focus in, work on some of the childhood trauma, work on some of the post-traumatic stress that they're truly affected with, you know? Because when you have empathy, when you understand that so much of who you are is just based on the life that you were given, the life that you grew up in, the pot that you were planted in, when you can understand this, it really helps you to move away from the negatives and just start to really understand things as being very simple. They're either compatible or not compatible. We're focused too much on right or wrong. Right or wrong is not even relevant. It's all about whether you and another person are compatible. See, because compatibility breeds stronger relationships. But if you're in an unbalanced relationship where you guys are not happy together, it's time to move on. You know, our relationship choices as adults are so often connected to traumatic experiences as a child. It's hard to change them just through willpower alone. Sometimes you truly have to talk to somebody. You truly have to have a real conversation and get some serious clarification about who you are and what you are trying to be. You know, we have so many aspirations, so many hopes, and we cannot deal with unhappy relationships. You know, and I'll just say it to you really quick. There are 5 things that I think really cause somebody to create an unhappy relationship. One is assumptions. You know, when we love someone and have spent considerable time with them, it's easy to assume that you know that person. It's easy to assume that you understand what really makes them tick. It's really easy to assume that you know somebody. And basically, when you assume you know someone, you're limiting your ability to learn what's new about them. So Most people don't think they make assumptions about their partners, but they do. And these are assumptions that really pigeonhole. They really lock a person into a particular perspective. And it's really damaging to a relationship. So one of the things I always try and talk about is not being somebody who's always assuming you know your partner. Even good assumptions can be unhelpful. Another thing that I noticed is projections. Psychological projections is basically when you attribute thoughts and feelings that you don't like in yourself onto those around you. Like when you deep down you're worried that your partner is or isn't the one. You start to feel like you're projecting your thoughts into their actions. You're projecting your thoughts into what other people are doing and how you perceive what they're doing. And then of course the third thing that I think most of us we'd all agree on is the level of doubt. Some doubt in a relationship is normal, but when people have so much doubt in a relationship, that's when we got a problem. Some doubts are not as destructive. Some doubts are useful, but most doubts, when you live a doubting, relationship with somebody, that's when, you got some real issues there. Another thing I just think, ultimately, if you really want to have a happy relationship, we have to go back to this conversation about boundaries. Because personal boundaries, basically allow you an area for other people to coexist with you in a way that doesn't strike a nerve, doesn't irritate you in a way that's going to create a negative problem. And lack of boundaries is one of the primary issues. If I could really put somebody, in an intensive camp, it would be a boundaries camp. But before I could do a boundaries camp with somebody, I have to go through a negative beliefs camp. I mean, there's so many little things we have to do. That's the reason why I love retreats. Because sometimes, you need about 4 or 5 days just to sit down with people and just work through boundaries. And then, negative belief systems and all this different stuff. Impulsivity, you guys. This is a psychological issue that means that you basically, tend to act on an emotion, act on a thought, rather than to think and deeply, critically analyze what you are thinking about. Impulsive people can really throw a relationship off. I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe in, impulsivity as it relates to, romanticism, as it relates to, sharing a special moment. But impulsivity as it relates to dealing with nervous energy, as it relates to dealing with, all kind of negative belief systems. Impulsivity as it relates to not allowing somebody to have an equal stronghold on what's going on in a relationship. It's a real killer. These are the 5 things that I think, really create some really unhealthy relationships. And I say this because when we're having unhappy relationships, when we're finding ourselves to be in a relationship with anybody, and again, it might sound like I'm talking about love relationships. I'm not talking about love relationships exclusively. I'm talking about relationships with family. I'm talking about relationships with friends. I'm talking about relationships with coworkers. I'm talking about relationships in general. We spend too much of our time. It would blow your mind if you found out how much of your time you actually spend around people who are not nurturing you, people who are not happy with the direction you're going, who are not fans of yours, not friends of yours, not supporters of yours. When you look and see what type of time you spend with these kind of relationships, and it's shocking. It's shocking because you could do better than that. And it's shocking because you turn down relationships to be around the relationships that you are in right now. So I say to you, I compel you, I am trying to get you to move away from the negative relationships that you are in and step clear and give yourself a moment. Give yourself a little time just to think, because it's so important. It's so important for us to start to grow and build our awareness to what it's like to be happy, to truly be in a relationship where the other person is excited about your growth potential and happy with who you are today. See, too many times we're in a relationship with someone who's focused on our growth potential and they're not happy with who you are today. But if you find within yourself, if you say to yourself, man, I am somebody who is worthy of being appreciated for who I am today and worthy of being celebrated for who I am trying to become. When you find that to be the core commonality of all the relationships that you're in, and you are on your way. But when you look back and you're in relationships that make you unhappy, relationships that are pulling you down, relationships where you're always wondering what this person said behind your back, relationships where you're always wondering where you're going with the conversation because there's always another side to the story. When you move away from those relationships, you begin to experience the happiness. You begin to experience the joy. You begin to feel what it's like to be in a happy life. Hey, this is your boy ToneDuncan. It is always a privilege. It is always a pleasure to spend time with you and to talk to you about relationships and how to get the most out of the people you spend the most time with. Because we have to constantly re-energize each other. And that means we can't be siphoned off of all of our energy. And we can't be parasitical on how we take other energy from people. Let's take and give. Re-energize each other. Hey, until next week, this is your boy ToneDuncan saying thank you for another great show. See you next week. Peace. This is your host, ToneDuncan. We are starting in a couple seconds. This is